Hello, after a few hiccups of real life events, I'm here with Darin Harvey, notable researcher and journalist, and also the co-host of Beyond Ground Zero. Darin, good evening. How are you doing, pal?
Adam, how you doing, man? It's been a long time, man. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, we got an interesting video here. It's basically the rescue operations and the rebuilding of the Pentagon after the 9/11 attacks from Flight 77 that crashed into it. And this aired by 60 Minutes on November 28, 2001. And we might as well just get straight to it here. What we'll do is, if you're new, one of us will basically pause the video to add our own thoughts and try to fill in the blanks.
Floor, but the third, fourth, and fifth floors remained suspended in midair for 35 minutes. Hundreds of people escaped. How is that possible? The answer lies in a partially classified government study of the terrorist bombings that have come before, like Oklahoma City and Khobar Towers. Everything we learned in that project was hidden inside the walls of the Pentagon itself, in anticipation that one day the building would be bombed. You're about to see how they defended the building. But first, hear from a man who experienced the miracle of the Pentagon.
5 minutes before the plane hit, somebody said, "Come over, you got to see what's going on." So I walked over and I was looking at the television. And I walked back to my desk and I called my wife.
John Yates is a civilian security manager in the Pentagon. That day, he was in his office watching the World Trade Center on TV.
And she asked me then to do the rest of my work for the remainder of the day from underneath my desk. So she just said it jokingly, and I joked, and I said, "Yeah, okay, honey, I will." And I walked back over to watch some more of what was going on in New York. And I had just been standing there for just a couple of minutes when the plane hit the building.
What happened?
The sound, it was deafening, absolutely deafening. And I just remembered this bright ball of fire that just went right over my head.
That fire burned 35% of his body. The plane hit directly below his office, but the floor held, giving some, but not all, a chance to live.
There were people standing next to you in the room, watching the television, watching what was happening in New York City.
Yes.
What happened to them?
They didn't make it. The lady standing to my left didn't make it.
They were standing right next to you.
Within an arm's length, yes. So why am I here? I don't know. I just don't know.
He's here in part because his floor was reinforced and held up for half an hour. In an astonishing stroke of luck, the terrorists had hit the only section of the Pentagon, the only section designed to resist a terrorist attack.
We had made several modifications to the building as part of that renovation. We think helped save people's lives.
Sure.
So this was the renovations that the Pentagon was doing. As mentioned earlier about the OKC bombing and the Khobar Towers in Saudi Arabia. This is where a lot of conspiracy theories come from. A lot of people, unfortunately, believe that during these renovations, they were putting bombs in their explosions. So when the plane or in their version, the missile hit, the explosions went out and caused, and they planted debris as also within the building of plane debris. That's a real conspiracy. That's what actually a lot of 9/11 truthers believe. So that's one conspiracy that could be put to bed. They were doing renovations because they wanted to make sure to help save lives if they ever got struck with a terrorist attack. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out because that was one of the ones that I got hit with talking to people how they planted plane debris inside the building when they're doing the renovations, and then they blew out into the lawn. So
And this
no
isn't
plane
just
hit.
this isn't just one single person saying this, who I know exactly who you're thinking of, but there's a couple of people that actually believe this. Now imagine there are thousands of people that started the renovation project back in 1996. And through the local, state, and federal law agencies that coordinated together, and I interviewed James Schwartz, who was the Pentagon on-scene commander from Arlington County Fire Department, along with the FBI agent that he was working with, Chris Combs. They coordinated together to basically have a better relationship with one another. Like I said, with state, local, and federal agencies working together hand in hand in terms of rescue and search operations if a terrorist attack was to happen at the Pentagon. And really, there was a better coordination at the Pentagon in Shanksville than there was in New York. And that's the reason why. And that conspiracy involving plane debris inside the walls of the Pentagon, where a missile would penetrate the Pentagon and then have the plane debris just blow out and plant itself all over the lawn. Now imagine the thousands of people that were working in this project that know about this. And for 3 years, you had to make sure that every single one of them had to remain quiet about what the operation entailed. And
So
this is really, this is really the height of ridiculous.
I hear you. I just want to bring it up because it is out there and a lot of people do believe it. But here, Adam, here's the solution to it. How about you just use a plane? So you don't have to worry about so your plane's already a missile full of fuel going 500 miles per hour. It's going to cause mass, it can cause casualties, destruction. Why would you go through the whole thing of planting plane debris and getting hit with a missile when you could just use a plane? So that's why I think that conspiracy is probably one of the more ridiculous ones.
Correct. See, to me, that's a mic drop, right? Because first of all, you're not involving thousands of public employees. Secondly, you're killing everybody on the plane anyway that you need to kill.
Right.
And thirdly, it's so simple. Just allow for the plane to crash into the building. No, they got to make up all these ridiculous theories about planes and missiles and holograms. And what it basically does, Darin, is basically cover up the actual conspiracies involving 9/11. One of them being that if there wasn't any Saudi involvement inside the 9/11 attacks, well, you take away the conspiracy of the CIA and Saudi government operatives that were inside the United States the year 1999, 2000, that were monitoring Al-Qaeda inside the country, which would mean that CIA and Saudi intelligence were committing an illegal operation, which is actually illustrated through the Canestraro document and Operation Encore files that were released in 2021.
Yes.
But, that's too much reading. We rather believe in the simplicity of it. So, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, but that's just ridiculous.
Lee Evey runs a $1 billion project to renovate the Pentagon. They've been working on it since 1993. The first section was 5 days away from being finished when the terrorists hit it with the 757.
You can start to smell the smoke here in this part of the building.
You can smell the smoke. You can see evidence of smoke damage here and there.
To see how so many escaped, you have to look inside the walls. The renovation project built strength into the 60-year-old limestone exterior with a web of steel beams and columns.
So you have these steel tubes. Again, they start on the first floor, go all the way up to the 5th floor, and all the way through, from floor to floor, we have everything bolted together with horizontal steel as well as the vertical steel. So it's all put together in one strong matrix of steel.
Let me just add too, because you brought this up earlier, Darin, the reason why this renovation project took place was because of the Oklahoma City bombing. And what happened was a lot of the casualties that happened there were basically from employees who were near the windows of adjacent buildings and also to the Oklahoma City Movement building. And the shrapnel shredded a lot of these bodies because the FBI was basically finding bodies that were shredded with shrapnel, glass, steel, metal, and other types of debris that went through these people's bodies. And some of them I heard were very gruesome, head injuries, face injuries that were just, some people couldn't even be recognized.
Right.
And so the Department of Defense basically undertook an operation as to where the Pentagon was basically an old building anyway, and they had insulation that was made from horsehair. I learned that from Captain James Schwartz, that I didn't know that the top of the building of the Pentagon was insulated with horsehair. And so they had to renovate the entire 5-ring structure. And basically that's the reason why for the conspiracy of why did these glass panes survive a plane crash was because of what he's describing here, Lee Evey, is that they were reinforced with steel and metal bolts and beams and anchors. And that's the reason why. These are bomb blast resistant windows. And later on in the video, you're going to see how these bomb blast windows were made.
Encases the windows and provides tremendous additional strength to the wall.
When the plane hit at 350 miles an hour, the limestone outside shattered. But inside, those shards of stone were caught by a shield of cloth that lines the entire section of the building.
This is a ballistic type cloth.
Saving them from
it helps
traffic.
prevent that masonry from perhaps fragmenting and blowing through an area where there are people.
It's essentially a bullet-resistant vest for the building.
That's in fact what they make bullet-resistant vests out of, is the same type of material.
All of this, especially the steel, held up the 3rd, 4th, and 5th floors. They stayed for 35 minutes. You can see them through the smoke, suspended over the hole gouged by the jet.
And obviously
Only
the first
after
floor,
the
plane impacted,
evacuation
nothing.
did the heat melt the new steel away.
That's what happens when you don't
If
have a
that
base.
area had not been renovated, that wall would have lasted how long?
Looking at the number of columns and support structures that were otherwise completely destroyed, it might have collapsed immediately.
I basically said a silent prayer to myself for the victims, and then in thanks that it hit where it hit.
Lieutenant General Bob Flowers commands the Army Corps of Engineers. The Corps helped design the Pentagon's new protection. The engineers studied past attacks, including the 1983 Marine barracks bombing in Lebanon, Oklahoma City in 1995, the U.S. embassies in East Africa, and the Khobar Towers barracks in Saudi Arabia.
At Khobar Towers, for example, most of the damage and casualties at Khobar were caused by flying debris from the structure and from the glass, etc. And so, based on that, we worked to design things to prevent flying debris and flying glass. At Oklahoma City, the bulk of the casualties were caused by the collapsing structure. So one of the things we studied was how to put redundant capability in a structure to prevent it from collapsing if it was attacked. And so by applying the lessons that you learn from doing those studies,
Yeah,
you can
sure.
better...
Go ahead, Darin.
Just want to point out, so it's showing they're evolving. They know these attacks are happening, and they're showing, hey, how can we stop more casualties from happening? Okay, there's no conspiracy here. Okay, these are. I mean, you got to think about it too. The Pentagon is always going to be a target. It was a target with the Bajinka plot. Okay, which they knew about. They knew the Pentagon would be a target, and they seen these bombings happening. They saw the OKC. They saw the Khobar Towers, which was a terrorist attack. They had to know the Pentagon, just like the World Trade Center, were always going to be targets. And this is them trying to figure out, like, hey, if it does happen, how can we save as many lives as possible? No conspiracy, nothing. Just trying to save people's lives.
And just to add on that, Darin, in 1999, December of 1999, December of 2000, the Pentagon ran an operation called Mass Casualty Operation, where a plane actually nosedives into the Pentagon, and it was from it was like a martyrdom operation, whatever. What if a plane had hit the Pentagon? And that just goes to show you that, the threat of the airline industry was well known within the Department of Defense. That's a conspiracy that nobody ever talks about. Like they knew that the threat to the airline industry from terrorists, Arab fundamentalists, was well known within the intelligence services, well known within the State Department, and well known to the Department of Defense. Now, here's a real conspiracy no one ever talks about, is that were there stricter security measures in place so that the airline industry could be protected? No. What about stricter immigration reform? No. Why not? Right? And then that's where the real questions begin. And we start interviewing people who are in charge of these agencies. And really, it just, for those who are into simplistic theories that everybody, all the agencies are in on it, well, it doesn't work like that because you involve so many people that need to know every bit of operation regarding the 9/11 operation. Well, no, that's not how it works. You have
Right.
to have compartmentalization, and it's just a very, and for something like 9/11, which is so, complex and so expansive, it's really impossible to keep everybody, quiet and to have everybody go along with the same thing for the
Mhm.
last 23 years while being monitored in their daily life. So this way they don't go off the reservoir and basically tell somebody about the real truth. It just doesn't work like that. And so, am I going to say that the CIA or the Department of Defense knew about 9/11 and they allowed these to happen? I'm not going there. In fact, we discussed this before we
Mhm.
pressed the report button. But I am going to say that they knew about a threat to the airline industry and
Yeah,
basically,
for sure.
right, and
And,
didn't
and
do anything.
I'll just bounce off that. I think with the airline industry, I think letting them know. I think honestly, they didn't want mass panic within the United States
Great point. Great
because
point.
if they did that, they're gonna lose money. It's gonna be,
Yes.
it's gonna be,
Yes.
it's gonna be, it's gonna be chaos because no one's gonna fly. Okay, so you think about all the money, the travel, everything's just gonna be halted. You know. Um,
Right.
so, and I think that's what was when I believe before what you call it was assassinated. Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. The
It's all
Taliban.
right. I do it all the time.
No, 2 days before 9/11, the guy who
Oh,
got
Ahmed Shah Massoud.
Masood. Yeah, Masood. Jeez, I can't believe I forgot that. Yeah, Masood. They knew something was going to happen, and they didn't want to put a ban or something
Right.
on the airlines, even though they knew something was coming. Because we can all agree they knew something was coming. They knew something big was coming.
Right.
They just didn't know exactly what day. And this is the conspiracy I always want to fight. You can never convince me that the United States knew exactly what day the terrorist attack was going to happen. You just can't convince me of that. But I will tell you, as I do believe, is they knew something big was happening,
Right. I
and
agree with this.
they
Now
failed.
imagine, Darin,
They failed.
would you want,
Our government
well,
failed us. They failed. They failed us on that day. The CIA,
oh, without question.
everyone failed the American people to keep us safe that day. That's something I think we can all agree on.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I was just going to intervene with you. Would you really want Bush to know about the details of 9/11 and him in front of a camera?
Yeah, he probably he would probably say, "Yeah, I ordered this hit on the Trade Center." No,
Right.
it would no. Yeah, that's like I said, that's a whole nother subject we could dive into for another time. That it could be a couple hours. We can talk about that, but I think what we can all agree is that yes, we were failed on that day, and we were failed years before that because the red flags were there. Proper channels, proper actions were not taken, and like I said, we can go on and on about the Phoenix memo and Bajinka plot. We can go on all about that. We know that, like I said, we were failed on that day, and
To
unfortunately,
protect structures in the future.
Tough way to learn a lesson.
Absolutely.
But there is an easier way. The Corps of Engineers is making a science of terror, setting off its own bombs. This is the first time the public has been allowed to see the Corps' counterterrorism work at its research center in Mississippi. Reed Mosier is the technical director for survivability.
You've developed a team of specialists that goes to these terrorist strikes as soon as they happen.
We try to get there as soon as we can so we can get the most information of what occurred before they start doing moving things, repair work, or even part of the removal for search. We'd like to get there as soon as possible.
What can you make of these buildings once they've been blown to bits?
We want to find out what performed well, what didn't perform well, try to characterize the size of the bomb, the blast.
What did you hit this with?
With a small amount of explosives.
Mosier also designs his own terrorist bombings in miniature, with exacting scale models of reinforced concrete buildings.
You've modeled this thing right down to the finest detail. You've got what we used to call cinder blocks, these concrete masonry units.
Right. They're actually scaled down to a quarter scale, and we use these in the experiment to build the walls inside of it.
On this day, Mosier's team is testing a common interior wall, particle board, steel wall studs, and sheetrock. It's set in a steel frame with instruments inside.
Right. Can we have a look?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, it's close in here. So this is the other side of the wall we were just looking at.
Correct.
This would be the interior of the building.
Right.
We're armed, ready to go.
Once the area is all clear, they set off a bomb. Inside, the destruction is captured in slow motion. They've done hundreds of these tests to create new kinds of building materials. For example, watch what happens to this concrete wall. Now look at the same kind of wall after it's been sprayed with a new plastic coating.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah.
The Corps of Engineers runs these experiments through its supercomputer center, one of the most powerful in the nation. The computer can test various kinds of bombs against different buildings without breaking any glass.
It's not just a pretty movie, it's an actual calculation.
In a special 3D imaging room, Mosher showed us how the supercomputer recreates the blast wave at Khobar Towers and predicts the path of every shard of glass from a single breaking window.
Just reach up and pick them out.
These studies have helped create a new generation of window that can stand up to tremendous force. This experiment shows how those new windows can be fitted into an old building.
So the window is strapped in. It's like a seatbelt.
Seatbelt, right. That's a good way to explain
And it pops out a couple of feet, looks like, and stops.
Stops, exactly.
What a mess.
The Corps has tested, the hard way, more than 100 window designs.
So what you have here is glass on the outside, glass on the inside, with this plastic sheet in the middle.
Right. It retains all the glass particles when it's hit. They all crack, and it's actually connected into the frame so that it gives it strength to keep it from blowing in.
The renovated section of the Pentagon had just been fitted with blast-resistant windows.
So
This is the
stop real quick.
room that
So
I was looking out
listen,
from.
there you go, right? For all the conspiracy theorists that basically say, well, why didn't these blast windows basically blow out? Well, there you have it.
Yeah, I guess.
mean, what
Why
else?
would? I mean, I guess
Yeah,
if they
right.
want to match casualties, why would they put all that stuff in there? If they just want to kill everyone, doesn't make any
Right,
sense.
right. That's a great point.
You know,
Um,
it is. It really is. You know, 9/11, like I said, is very expansive, but 9/11 also involves a ton of common sense, and
Sure.
unfortunately, a lot of people lack that. So,
Yeah, I love this point that you raised. Like, if the Pentagon basically wanted, mass casualties, why would they reinforce the area where the plane is actually going to hit?
right.
Right? Exactly right. And not only that, it just goes to show you that, people who make up these fringe conspiracies basically don't do their due diligence about the reason why those windows actually survived.
Right.
And look, this episode aired November 28, 2001. So that means it was out in the public view a
Absolutely.
month after the 9/11 attacks itself. So that means the truth movement would have known, basically, oh, this is the reason why this window survived, not because a missile hit the plane. And why would you use a missile in the one area of the world where they can discern between a plane and a missile?
Yeah. Exactly.
Never jived with me other than that. But yeah, because this area was renovated with those, how many lives were saved?
Exactly. That's the whole point. There would have been a lot more people that have died if these renovations were not intact.
For sure. Let's see.
U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Vince Cam was sitting next to one of those windows.
I was sitting basically about 3 feet away from the window, and I can see with that loud bang that accompanied as a fireball that came up towards the window.
This fireball, bright as the sun?
Oh, it is much brighter. It's like a stove. If you can imagine turning on a stove, it's kind of like bright reddish orange.
But neither the heat nor the force broke through the windows that were right next to the impact site.
Saved his
The
life.
Pentagon's new windows cost $10,000 apiece. No one has counted how many lives they saved.
Correct.
If I was sitting in the same window on the unrenovated part of the Pentagon, I probably wouldn't have survived it.
Today, Lee Evey's team has finished tearing down the section that they had just put up, 400,000 square feet.
So on the order of 10% of the Pentagon is gone. And there goes another half
There
a
goes
percent.
a little bit more. That's correct. Yeah, about less than 10% of the building is being taken down.
This was the Pentagon then, but look at it now.
Nothing happened.
Already the new Pentagon is rising. These steel rods that will support the new columns are being sunk into the same old pilings. September 11th will always be an essential date for the Pentagon. It was September 11th, 1941, that ground was broken for the building. And on September 11th, 2002, they intend to open the new section.
What's it going to look like when you have it finished?
You know what it looked like before?
Yeah.
That's what it's going to look like again. Exactly.
They're already pulling the limestone out of the same Indiana quarry of 60 years ago. In Mississippi, the supercomputers are analyzing the September 11th attack to improve the defenses even more. And John Yates has already been told that he will be moving back into the very same office.
It's a testament to the work that the people in the renovation did and the engineers. And, you know, if it hadn't been done, if there'd been no structural hardening, I can't imagine what the death and destruction would be.
Yep.
It would have been more catastrophic than what it is. 10 times, 100 times worse.
And you would have been in that number.
Yeah. I don't ask why anymore. I just say thank you.
Well, there you have it. And,
Yeah.
you know, the reason why we air these videos is basically not to propagate this official narrative or whatever that is. It's to basically open up conversation that nobody else is having. And what we do is basically try to insert puzzle pieces that are missing to the attacks itself in every facet of 9/11. Now, we're not going to have all the answers for sure,
Yeah, absolutely.
but we can have some answers. And with that, you know, people like yourself and Sean Russell and DJ Thermodetonator and others are basically going to have, you know, years and years worth of answers as soon as information is released. And this is the reason why we do videos like this. And I'm glad that you came on tonight, Darin. Is there any parting thoughts for this?
Yeah. Well, Mr. Yates' statements should shake you to your core. I mean, you know, the guy witnessed people around him dying, and he was one of the lucky ones that survived. I point him back to just imagine what the loved ones feel, the ones who died at the Pentagon, and just 9/11 in general. So when we go around and talk about no plane and missile hitting, or you know, fake debris, fake phone calls, fake passengers, just fake everything, look at that man's face and look at how he's reacting just to be alive. Now just think of the ones who got lost that day. And when you go around and talk about how none of that stuff happened, it's a total disrespect. And I don't have respect for you. I really can't. Because 9/11 is about the families. It's about the victims. It's not about me or you. It's not why we do these videos and for fame or just like, oh, I just want views. And that's not how it works, man. We do this on our time when we have free, you know, and we do this to show that, hey, you know, there's people still grieving after, you know, 23 years. So I just want people to realize, like, hey, you know, it's okay to have questions about 9/11 because I still do. You still do. Others still do. You have to do it in a way that's tactful, and you have to do it in a way where it makes sense. So when you go around and talk about these conspiracy theories, like I mentioned before, no planes, no hijackers, no phone calls, none of that, it leads you to nowhere. It makes you look like an idiot. It makes you look like a fool, you know, because you got to realize what these families went through and they're still going through today. And then when you purport these these conspiracy theories, it's a slap in the face to them. It truly is. So really think about um, how you talk about 9/11 and your research and just this and like I said, Adam, this came out 2 months after this thing has been available for years, and it helps explain a lot of questions that people have. There would have been mass casualties if that renovation wasn't done. So if the government or whatever was behind it, why would they do that? It makes no sense. So I mean, I really hope people find this video important because it's like I said, it's good to know. It really is.
Yeah, wonderfully put, Darren. I'm not going to add more to it. Look, thank you very much for
Yeah,
guys for
thank you,
tuning
Adam.
in. And me and Darren will do more videos in the future, but Christmas is upcoming, so we'll be a little bit busy, but we're not ending anytime soon. We got so much to talk about, and we'll do future videos together, and we'll try to do them a little
Yeah,
bit more,
yeah,
recent
for
than
sure,
really far
for
apart.
sure.
So, Darren,
Absolutely.
once again, thank you very much for coming on.
Yes. Thank you, Adam. Thank you so much, man. I hope you have a good holiday if I don't talk to you then, but everyone take care and thank you so much.
Yes, guys, thank you. Merry Christmas.